الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين. أما بعد، قال مولانا إمام أبو الحسن موسى بن جعفر الكاظم صلوات الله وسلامه عليه: إن فاطمة صديقة شهيدة، صدق الإمام وآمنا به. نوروا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. Ahibba'i, you find that the first 7 days after the martyrdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was one of the most crucial times of Islamic history. One of the most crucial times that Islamic history has passed through. And in fact, the events that took place on the first 7 days upon the martyrdom of the Holy Prophet went on to change the landscape of Islamic history for centuries to come. In fact, the events that took place on the first 7 days upon the martyrdom of Rasulullah, centuries later, in this present day, knowingly or unknowingly, are victims of the ramifications of those actions that were taken 7 days within this 7-day period, the first week of the martyrdom of Rasulullah. And hence it is important for us as free-thinking souls that are seeking haqq and truth, that we study this aspect of history, derive lessons from it to understand our present and shape the path for our future. For indeed, each and every one of us within our lives, we're supposed to be living with a vision, we're supposed to be living with a goal, a hadaf, a target. Entum ahibba'i, every day we wake up in the morning, there needs to be a target and a vision and a goal in regards to the purpose of our existence. And for every passing day and every morning that you wake up, know that you are getting closer and closer towards this goal. A day which is inevitable, the dhuhur of the awaited master of mankind, the one whose arrival has been a legacy that has been foretold, a prophecy that has been told within the Tawrat and the Injil and the Zabur, whose prophecy has been foretold within the Quran. And every one of the Anbiya came and gave glad tidings about this awaited master. Entum ahibba'i, you and I are living in this age where every day we get closer and closer to the arrival of this master, who is then going to lay the foundation for a global just government in which peace and tranquility prevails. For the way you live your life today, is going to determine whether you are going to be a part of that grand movement or no. Fata'ammalu, be careful and pay attention to this. And the qadiyya of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra is directly connected to the qadiyya of the Hujjah, to the qadiyya of Imam al-Hujjah. For you find that these 7 days, the events that happened within these 7 days reshaped Islamic history forever, for time to come. And you find that a number of events happened. Number one, the burial of the Holy Prophet without the presence of a majority of the companions. The ashab of Rasulullah, when you refer back to the books of Tariq, be it from Shia or non-Shia sources, you will not find more than the names of 10 people who prayed and gave the final burial rites to Rasulullah. And the whole of Medina, because of their preoccupation with Saqifa, in the Saqifa of Bani Sa'ad. Ajib. Somebody may come around and say, Shaykhuna, is this possible? These are Ashab of Rasulullah who just completed the Hijjatul Wida with Rasulullah a few months back. People who used to recite Salatul Jama'ah with Rasulullah. Hundreds, if not thousands. Thousands, ba'ad akid. The thousands didn't exist in their numbers in Medina. And there is a number of reasons for that. But the hundreds of companions at the very minimum inside of Medina. How is it possible? How is it logical that for this Muslim ummah that had a leader as great as Rasulullah, that majority of them were occupied with the dunya and the khilafah? Not more than 10 people recited Salatul Mayyit, participated in the funeral prayers of Rasulullah. How can it be? I said, Baba, don't be surprised. Because the Quran speaks about events like these that occurred where people turned their back on Rasulullah in the lifetime of Rasulullah. And we are commanded to read this from within the Quran. Surah Al-Munafiqun, look at the surah of the hypocrites. A surah which is mustahab for you to recite every Friday. Why? Within Salatul Jum'ah, it is also mustahab that in the second rak'ah, after Suratul Hamd, the surah of the hypocrites is recited. Why is this surah of the Munafiqun or Munafiqeen an important part of Salatul Jum'ah to be recited on Fridays? Why? This Friday, which is a day of universal congregation of all Muslims, this Friday which is supposed to be the universal or the weekly day of Eid, Allah Azza wa Jal says, on this Friday of Muslim gatherings, recite the surah of the hypocrites. Why? Everything within the Sharia, everything within Islam is daqiq, is absolutely precise and has a hikmah. فأنت, when you refer back to Surah Al-Munafiqun, you find towards the end of the verses you recite this. Or in Surah Al-Jum'ah. In fact, when you go back to Surah Al-Jum'ah, in Surah Al-Munafiqun, you find the traits of the hypocrite. But inside of Surah Al-Jum'ah, which is mustahab to be recited, by the way, between brackets, in terms of understanding it from a fiqh perspective, Salatul Jum'ah, within the ghaibah of the 12th Imam, number one, is not obligatory. Number two, when the Salatul Jum'ah is recited, the second surah can be replaced with any other surah other than Suratul Jum'ah. But Jum'ah in itself is mustahab and is the spirit of the Salat. Within Suratul Jum'ah, you find that again, a reference is made towards the hypocrites. وَإِذَا رَأَوْا تِجَارَةً أَوْ لَهْوًا انفَضُّوا إِلَيْهَا وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا. Ajib. Have you pondered over this verse and looked at the translation? Allah Azza wa Jal points out the reality of the people who surrounded Rasulullah. وَإِذَا رَأَوْا تِجَارَةً أَوْ لَهْوًا انفَضُّوا إِلَيْهَا وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا. When the trade caravans came into Medina, you see, back in the day in Medina, when there used to be traders that come from outside of the city, they used to announce their arrivals. So they used to beat drums and they used to blow trumpets, and you know that this massive caravan has come from out of town, and there are goods and there are clothes and there are all these fancy things that you really can't buy from Medina. An entire export exhibition. Think about it as an expo exhibition coming into Medina. So when they would come in, they would beat their drums and they would announce their arrival. And in Suratul Jum'ah, the end of Suratul Jum'ah speaks about this reality. One time Rasulullah is reciting Salatul Jum'ah, delivering the khutbah for Salatul Jum'ah, while he's addressing his companions. Them trade caravans are coming into Medina. They begin to beat their drums and blow their trumpets and announce new deals and discounts. وَمَا أَدْرِي شُو. The Quran says the companions, when they heard the sale deals that were happening and the new goods that have come, they stood up from the mosque, abandoned Rasulullah, and went to buy their goods. فَلَا تَسْتَغْرِبْ. Do not be surprised when you come across historical accounts that people didn't attend the burial of Rasulullah. How disrespectful. You can imagine if you have a normal Maulana Khatib who is sitting on a mimbar, speaking with you, speaking with a crowd, and then if you hear the ice cream truck outside with its bells, and you want people just stand up and run behind the ice cream truck. How disrespectful is it to the scholar? This is Rasul Allah Azza wa Jal speaking. But it's a reality that we recite every month, every week. It's inside of Surah Al-Jum'ah. For you find that the first event or the first occurrence within the 7 days is the burial of Rasulullah, in which not more than 10 people attended his funeral. And a majority of the companions are fighting for worldly leadership in the Saqifa of Bani Sa'ad. 1. Number 2 was the confiscation of the land of Fadak. Number 3 was the khutbah Fadakiyya delivered by Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra inside of Masjid al-Nabawi. Number 3, and inshallah tomorrow we shall analyze or do a tafsir of one paragraph of the khutbah or one line of the khutbah of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alamin. Number 3, so we had what? The burial of Rasulullah. Number 2, the confiscation of the land of Fadak. Number 3, the khutbah Fadakiyya delivered by Sayyidat Nisa al-Alamin in the masjid. And then you have the assault that took place on the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidat Zahra, which then led to the subsequent martyrdom of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alamin. These important events that happened within the first 7 days, it is necessary that every event in detail is analyzed. Today, I want to speak to you and I want to discuss with you and share light with you on this particular aspect of the confiscation of the land of Fadak. What happened what was the land of Fadak? How was it confiscated? Under what pretext was it confiscated? What were the arguments that were presented by Amirul Mu'mineen when it came to the land of Fadak? And from there on, inferring jurisprudential, legalistic conclusions from the event of the confiscation of Fadak and how those lessons can be inferred in this day and age. All of this with the barakat of a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Beginning, Ahibai, the land of Fadak. The land of Fadak was a vast village that was located within the southwest area outside of Medina. Number 1, the land of Fadak was a massive village. Be careful of those historians who come and tell you that Fadak was a garden or Fadak was a small piece of land. Abadan la. Fadak was a massive village southwest of Medina. And to give you an idea, Fadak was one of the most fertile agricultural lands within the entire Arabian Peninsula. Look at the strategic importance of the land of Fadak. It was the most fertile agricultural land in the entire Arabian Peninsula, such that there were natural water reservoirs that would spring out of the land, helping in the irrigation of the land and the produce, the yield from farming, the annual yield. This is mentioned by Al-Jawhari in his Kitab al-Saqifa, the annual yield that was derived from agricultural activities and farming from the land of Fadak was close to 100,000 dirhams per annum. Tayyib. 100,000 dirhams per annum in order for you to understand the importance of this 100,000 dirhams and the importance of the land of Fadak, we try and calculate a present value. How would you estimate, or what would be the present value of 100,000 dirhams then in today's currency, in today's term? Gives you an understanding of the weight of the land of Fadak. 100,000 dirhams, historians come forward and say that at that time, at the time of Rasulullah, a single sheep could be purchased for a dirham. If you come into today's currency, with today's market, because we're trying to understand this from a present value perspective, the present value of a sheep, give or take, $200. So if $200 in today's term is equivalent to a single dirham at that time, you put 200 times 100,000. What is the answer that you get? 200 million? 2 million. 20 million. You find the value, economic value of the returns and the yield from the land of Fadak within the millions. Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili comes forward and says that the date plantations inside the land of Fadak were equivalent to the number of date plantations found in the entire city of Kufa in the 7th century. So we begin to understand over here that the land of Fadak was not only a tiny piece of land, it was a massive piece of fertile land that had the ability to generate powerful economic resources, millions of what would be considered in today's dollar value. If we understand this, we come into the history of the possession of Fadak by Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. Mufassirin of the Quran are unanimous on the fact that when in Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ وَالْمِسْكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ. Allah Azza wa Jal revealed this verse to Rasulullah upon the conquest of Khaybar. وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ, and give your near ones, yani your close ones, your family members, their due right. For Rasulullah asks Jibreel, who are the near ones, the Dhal Qurba, that are intended in this verse by Allah Azza wa Jal? Jibreel comes down with the reply from Allah Azza wa Jal that the Dha Qurba in this verse is your daughter Fatemiyah salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is a historical fact that is recorded not only by historians but by mufassirin of the Quran, even from the non-Shia school of thought. For if you were to refer back to the Tariq of Ibn Kathir, when it comes to the advent of the conquest of Khaybar, he narrates this occurrence that this land was given to Sayyidah Zahra upon the command of Allah, the revelation of the verse وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ. You refer back to As-Suyuti, who is one of the greatest mufassirin of the Quran from the Mukhalifin, in his tafsir Durr al-Manthur of Surah Al-Isra verse 29. He says that this is upon the revelation of this verse, Fadak was given to Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. And similarly, Muttaqi al-Hindi in his book Kunzul Ummal, and Al-Haythami in his book Majma'u Zawaid. Powerhouses from the scholars of the non-Shia are unanimous on the fact that this verse was revealed commanding Rasulullah to give the land of Fadak to Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. Tayyib, the conquest of Fadak, or the conquest of Khaybar, Afwan, happened in the 8th year after Hijrah. Rasulullah's martyrdom in the 11th year after Hijrah, which means that for 3 years, ownership of this vast village of Fadak was under the control of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. And year in, year out, The yields, agricultural yields that were derived from the land of Fadak was then used as part of the Baytul Mal to eradicate poverty from amongst the Muslim Ummah, such that there was not a single person from the Muhajirin or the Ansar except that he was a beneficiary or she was a beneficiary of the agricultural yields that were coming from the land of Fadak. For you understand over here, despite this vast wealth at the disposal of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, she uses this wealth to eradicate poverty from within the Muslim Ummah. Despite having access to this wealth, the house of Fatima sleeps hungry. Hajj recited beautiful verses of the Quran, and every verse in the Quran is beautiful, but from the recitation of the Quran that was done today, Al-Hajj, the Qari, narrated or recited for us verses from Surah Al-Insan. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. And into, all of you are familiar with this incident where 3 nights or 3 days in a row, Ahlul Bayt, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein and Sayyida Fidda gave away their iftar 3 days in a row. That iftar which they gave away, what was that iftar? It was bread. The wheat for that bread, where was that wheat for that bread obtained from? Amir al-Mu'mineen went and took a loan from one of the local traders inside of Medina. A family that has access to wealth of this sort lives in debt, because for this holy household, the well-being and the economic upliftment of the ummah comes before anything else. So you find for 3 years, the land of Fadak is the undisputed property of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. Mufassirin of the Quran and Sahabas of Rasulullah who used to memorize the Quran and used to memorize the Asbabul Nuzul of the Quran. Asbabul Nuzul, the reasons or the surroundings and the context in which those verses were revealed. Those who had memorized them in the thousands, it was all undisputed that these verses or this verse in particular was revealed for Sayyidah Zahra and Fadak. For you find that upon the martyrdom of Rasulullah and the bay'ah is given to Ibn Abi Quhafa after the Saqifa, the first thing that is done after bay'ah is given to him is that he sends a contingency of armed men to the land of Fadak. And this land of Fadak, which was a massive village, there were a number of farmers who were employed by Sayyidah Zahra and the Amirul Mu'mineen, who were working in the farms and ensuring that the dates were grown and the dates were picked and the land was watered, so on and so forth. This land of Fadak, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen in essence played a role. Allahu Akbar. In today's terminology, it would be seen as Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra played a role in improving and uplifting even the employment within the Muslim Ummah. Those people who didn't have jobs, people who didn't know how to farm, they would go to the land of Fadak, this land owned by Sayyidah Zahra, and would learn life skills on how to farm and how to plant dates and how to pick the dates and so on and so forth. There's an entire employment cycle that was in place. Sayyidah Zahra, a wali from the awliya of Allah Azza wa Jal, who was granted the responsibility in the well-being of the ummah through the management of the land of Fadak. In any case, these contingency of armed men are sent to the land of Fadak and all of them are expelled. You know what is the issue? The wakil, yani the representative, who you would say is the general manager of that entire village or that entire farming land. So what is the issue? This is the Khalifa of Rasulullah has taken over the land and you guys are all exiled. You guys are all forced out from here. The historians mention that these wakil or this wakil, the employees within the village of Fadak, go back to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen and say that Nisa al-Alameen. And they complain to them and they say that Ibn Abi Qahafa sent a contingency of armed men and we have been forcefully evicted from the land of Fadak. At this point, Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to Masjid al-Nabawi and he confronts Ibn Abi Quhafa. You find this conversation, which I've summarized and paraphrased, you find this entire conversation inside of Kitabul Ihtijaj, which is authored by Alama Tabarsi. And anyone who reads Kitabul Ihtijaj, which is a compilation of some of the most mashhur and some of the most eloquent debates, theological and philosophical, from every one of the A'immas, from Amir al-Mu'mineen all the way down to Imam al-Askari. Have a read of the Muqaddimah, the introduction of Kitabul Ihtijaj by Alama Tabarsi. And you find in this Muqaddimah, within the introduction, Alama Tabarsi says that I do not even pay attention to the sanad of these debates because the matan, the content and the eloquence within these sermons in itself is absolute proof of its authenticity, that it emanates from a non-ma'soom. In addition to the fact that these sermons and their attribution to the Ahlul Bayt was something which was already widespread, was known. There was no two people who would debate about this. In any case, Kitabul Ihtijaj, Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to Masjid al-Nabawi. Ibn Abi Qahafa and Ibn Sahak are seated by the pulpit of Rasulullah. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to him and he says to him, on what basis have you confiscated the land of Fadak whilst it was in her possession in the lifetime of Rasulullah over the last 3 years? He replies by saying, I have heard a hadith from the Holy Prophet. نحن معاشر الأنبياء لا نورث. We, the Anbiya, the Holy Prophets, do not leave behind any inheritance. وَمَا تَرَكْنَاهُ صَدَقَةً. And what we leave behind in regards to our wealth is sadaqah. Now over here, this last part, مَا تَرَكْنَاهُ صَدَقَةً. There is only one person in the entire Muslim history who has narrated this tradition. And this is Ibn Abi Quhafa himself. There is no other party that is witness to Rasulullah ever saying this. In addition to the fact that this hadith, that we do not leave behind inheritance and what we leave behind is sadaqah, goes against the Quran, because you find within the Quran that Sulaiman inherited from Dawood. And this is the hujjah that Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen used. In any case, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, on what basis did you deny Fatima? He says, because of this hadith over here, that we do not leave inheritance except that it is sadaqah. Amir al-Mu'mineen says to him, and over here Amir al-Mu'mineen uses the principles of jurisprudential legislation. See, when it comes to an Islamic government, the true Islamic government according to the principles of Ahlul Bayt, the rules and regulations that you find within the books of fiqh actually make up the law. The entire legislation, constitution is the Quran, and the legislation within the field of judiciary and jurisprudence, fiqh, becomes the basis for the judiciary. Your ahkam fiqhiyya now become the law and constitute legislation in itself. For Amir, we have a rule which is put down by Rasulullah, where he says, al-bayyinatu al-mudda'i, which means that, let me explain this before we go into what Amir al-Mu'mineen said. Al-bayyinah al-mudda'i is a law within the judicial system as per the government of Islam taught by Rasulullah, whereby if there is a dispute between any two individuals, you have a plaintiff and you have a defendant, the burden of proof is upon the plaintiff. It is not upon the defendant. So if I have done so, if I have been accused of committing an X crime, the burden of proof, the burden falls upon the one who has accused me of theft to come forward with an X amount of proofs that show that I'm guilty. When those proofs are presented towards me, Ani, as a defendant, my rebuttal will then be to provide my proof on how I am innocent. But the burden of presenting the initial proof against any form of accusation falls upon the person who makes the accusation. The plaintiff is the one who bears the responsibility of providing the proof. And this is a rule that we have inside of Islamic jurisprudence. And this is how the law works under an Islamic government. Hence, when it comes to property, enter as a Muslim who owns a certain property and have been using this property for an X amount of time, and everybody knows that you belong to this, or this property belongs to you. If somebody down the line comes and makes a claim that this property in essence is not yours but it is mine, then the one who makes the claim has the burden of proof. But you find that when it came to the land of Fadak, this Fadak which has been the property of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra for 3 years before the martyrdom of Rasulullah, each and every household in Medina has eaten from the dates that have been grown in Fadak and has been given to them as charity, as benefits, as you may say in today's day and age, from the land of Fadak. Now you have Ibn Abi Quhafa makes a claim that this land cannot belong to Fatima. It belongs to the Muslim treasury. You give us proof that this land belongs to you. Amirul Mu'mineen said, how do you ask proof from me? Because when Amirul Mu'mineen contested him, Ibn Abi Quhafa said to Amirul Mu'mineen, give me proof that Rasulullah gave this land of Fadak to Fatima. So Amirul Mu'mineen said, we are the defendants. The burden of proof is not upon the defendant. The burden of proof is upon the plaintiff, the one who is making the complaint. See, a person, what Amirul Mu'mineen is pointing towards, a person who is claiming to be the Khalifa of Allah, violating the Sharia of Allah within the judiciary field. And you know, the judiciary is the most important part of a government, because it is through the judiciary that justice is maintained and implemented. For Amirul Mu'mineen says to him, aren't you going against the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal? That the bayyinah is the responsibility of the mudda'i. Kitabul Ihtijaj Alamat Tabarsi says, fasakat. Fasakat yani, he kept quiet and he looked down. At this time, Umar ibn Khattab says to Amirul Mu'mineen that we are not concerned with your talks and your philosophy. Bring for us 2 witnesses who are just, who will testify for us that this land belongs to Fatima, and we will give the land back to you. Amirul Mu'mineen looks at Ibn Abi Quhafa and he says to him, do you read the Quran? He says, yes. He says, have you come across the verse, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَحْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He says, have you come across this verse? He says, yes. He says, أَفِيكُمْ نَزَلَتْ هَذَا الْآيَةِ أَمْ فِينَا? He says, did this verse, was it revealed upon you or was it revealed upon us? The ayah of Tathir, indeed Allah Azza wa Jal has purified you, Ahlul Bayt, from all type of shortcomings, all type of inconsistencies, anything short, any form of imperfection. Allah has purified you from every sort of imperfection. He says, was this verse revealed for us or for you? Ibn Abi Quhafa says, no, it was revealed for you. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, okay, so if you acknowledge that Ayatul Tathir was revealed upon me and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein and Rasulullah, Keeping this in mind, let me ask you, if two people from the Muslim Ummah came to you and they come to you as the head judge, as a judge within the court of law, two people come to you and accuse Fatima of committing a sin, would you take their testimony? Ibn Abi Quhafa said, if two testimonies come to me, then I will punish Fatima because she is no different from the rest of the Muslimin. Do you know what the response of Amir al-Mu'mineen was? He says, return back to Kitabul Ihtijaj, إِذَنْ فَأَنْتَ كَافِرٌ. If this is the case, you are a kafir. Allah. Why? He says, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through ayatul tathir establishes the infallibility of Fatima. Through this verse of the Quran, Allah is testifying that Fatima can never be wrong. Fatima can never commit a crime. Fatima can never say a lie. Fatima is the manifestation of truth. So when you say that she is like any other woman and that you would take the testimony of two people, when it came to the word of Fatima, that means you are shunning the testimony of Allah, because Allah testifies to the authenticity of Fatima. When Fatima says something, it is as Allah has said something. And by you negating this and even asking for witnesses is an insult on the book of Allah. The burning of the house was a tragedy greater than every tragedy. In the eyes of Islam, to question the truthfulness of Sayyidah Fatima in itself is a grave musibah, which we need to cry for. There are a number of implications that can be inferred from this. Let me take a few moments and inshallah we go into Masa'ib. Ahibai, number one. See, understanding what happened in Saqifa, drawing lessons from it, and understanding current economic, geopolitical problems and issues that we face. The confiscation of the land of Fadak represented what would be considered in today's term the forceful nationalization of private property. Ahibai, Islam negates and is against the nationalization of personal or private property. And you find that economic policy and understanding economic policy is absolutely important from a perspective of deen, because deen, religion, is an all-inclusive system that includes our dunya as well as our akhirah. Do you know how the Muslim Ummah has been knowingly or unknowingly been influenced by communist mentality, even when it comes to political theory, on the basis that communism is a power that fights against a free market which promotes inequality, a free market in where there is a big gap and there is a growing gap between the rich and the poor. The communist school of thought comes and puts forward their concept of equality for all human beings, such that no one stays in poverty. This is the sales pitch. But what happens is, within communism, one of their fundamental rules is that no one has the right of land ownership, or land ownership returns back to the government. Islam is against this. And this is mukhawwaf. Sometimes you find Muslim activists on the streets who are going out and promoting communist statements, communist slogans, thinking that they are serving Imam al-Hujjah, thinking that they are serving Islam, and they are coming to protest. Baba, everybody understands that within the free market there are flaws, but this doesn't mean that an Islamic stance is the communist stand. Abadan la. In fact, when you come and you look at the rules of property ownership within Quran and within the economic structure taught to us by Ahlul Bayt, do you know, categorically speaking, the government does not have any right to claim ownership on any land, and the istidlal is from the Quran. You refer back to Surah Al-Baqarah, if my memory serves me right, verse number 29, or one of the verses around 29. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُم مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. It is He who has created for you everything in the earth. هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ. It is He who created. For who? لَكُمْ. The pronoun lakum or kum, the pronoun kum, kaf, mim, refers to who? To all of you. Yani the entire creation. Allah Azza wa Jal through the Quran is speaking to the entire creation. So Allah Azza wa Jal is making a statement that this entire earth has been created for you. Land has been created for the people. Ownership of land returns back to the masses. Allah didn't say within the Quran that the land has been created for ownership by governments. In the government of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the government of Rasulullah, there was no concept such as land tax. In the government of Imam al-Hujjah, there will be private property because this is what is propagated within the Quran, and in the government of Amir al-Mu'mineen, private property in which there is no land tax. Ahibai, you return back to global statistics of poverty. I'm sure there is poverty in this country as well. You refer back to places within the Far East, places within South America, to Africa, and you tally up the number of squatters. Squatter is a term that is given to a person pretty much who does not own a house, does not have a land, and they skip from land to land, use other people's land to reside on it. Basically, people who are homeless. Homeless, why? Because even this shibr of land, even this 1 square meter of land cannot be given to them or is not given to them. By who? By the government. Have you heard of forceful evictions of slum areas by the government? And people who are at the lowest level of the economic class, their houses that are made of mud walls and using steel plates are demolished by governments to make space for big rise developments. Why? Who claims ownership of that land? Within the government of Amir al-Mu'mineen, land, ownership of land is a God-given right for each and every human being. Just like the way breathing is a God-given. No one has the right to charge you for air. No one has the right to charge you for water. We drink water, we pay for it, and even the one by the mimbar. But the right is supposed to be, so maybe bad example, but the right is supposed to be free water, just like air. The right of everybody to own land. Ahibai, it is important that as intellectuals, and I address you, mu'mineen, mu'minat, who live in this beautiful city of Manchester, city with a high student population, a city with world-renowned universities. Universities in Manchester that are responsible, if you could use this word, for the production of thinkers who then work to contribute at a global scale. The think tank for change in the universities, one of these universities is here in Manchester. It becomes our responsibilities as Shias of Ali Muhammad that when it comes to economic policy of land ownership, economic policy of eradication of poverty, today people struggle to become homeowners just in the UK because they cannot afford the stamp duty, which is a form of land tax. It is our responsibilities of Shias of Ali Muhammad that we go into the universities and we present theses on economic policy from the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. We have the solutions to global problems from the teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why are we not present within the university circles? This is from the lessons of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra. Fadak was a personal property. that was forcefully nationalized by the government of the time. And now we need to be forward thinking and we need to be able to participate in this. Ba'ad, you refer back to Kitab al-Ihtijaj, a second example. You refer back to Kitab al-Ihtijaj, in one part, Ibn Abi Qahafa says to Amir al-Mu'mineen or to Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen that we are taking away this land of Fadak from you, and the gains or the annual yield, which we said is about 100,000 dirhams, this 100,000 dirham, these yields will then be used to purchase weapons for the Muslim army in their conquests. Ta'ammalu jayyidan. Pay attention to this very closely. And it is something which is absolutely contemporary. With the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If you remember in the beginning of the lecture, we said that the yields of the land of Fadak was used for what? For feeding the hungry people of Medina. The yields from the land of Fadak was used to eradicate poverty from amongst the Muhajirin and the Ansar, who are the citizens of the state. Meaning that the land of Fadak, the produce from the land of Fadak, the resources of the land of Fadak were used to uplift the economic development of the citizens of the state of Islam. Correct or not? Over here, as soon as Saqifa happens, the leader of Saqifa says in Masjidun Nabawi that we are seizing this land, and the funds of this land are then going to be used to fund military expeditions outside of Hijaz. Baba, in today's day and age, one of the greatest problems that we face is when countries allocate resources of their countries for military arms and the purchase of military arms. Look at how this thought, fikra, emanates from the time of Saqifa. The politics that you see today is not new politics. This is politics that they have learned from Saqifa, which is why in Ziyarat Ashura we say, Allahumma al'an awwala man dhalama Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The first ones who oppressed Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, alladhi assasu asas al-dhulm, those who established oppression in its essence. Over there, Fadak is being seized. The yields of Fadak, which is supposed to be used for the economic upliftment of the citizens of the state, now those funds are being diverted for the purchase of military arms. That time it was swords and what they would use to pelt over catapults and so on and so forth, and spears and bows and arrows and everything. And today, different weapons, but the concept is the same. Do you know? Stockholm Institute of Peace, or the Stockholm Institute of Research and Peace, something of the sort. Stockholm Institute of Research and Peace. They put forward a finding and a report in 2018. A whopping $1.8 trillion was spent in global arms trade. You should get $1.8 trillion. Another researcher comes forward, and he's affiliated with the University of Columbia. He comes forward and he says, if $1.75 billion was to be used every year for 10 consecutive years, starting from 2018, by 2028, the world would be free of poverty. You need $1.75 billion per year for 10 years to eradicate the world of poverty. And over here, $1.8 trillion are used per annum for military arms. And these military arms, when these funds could be used to feed the citizens of the state, uplift the economic status of the citizens of that state. It's been used to wage war. You look at the game that is being played. You look at the Muslim countries that are involved in arms trades, using wealth of the people to fund for arms while their citizens die of hunger. And subhanallah, the dunya is such that the same people that you buy arms from to defend yourself are the same ones who sell the very arms to your enemies. They sell the Muslims the arms and watch them fight and kill between themselves. Mal asaf. This is a reality. In any case, the diversion of national funds or the diversion of resources towards military arms and purchase of military arms when they should be used for economic upliftment. This is extracted from one of the lessons of Fadak. Because this is what Fatimah alayhi salam did. She used it for the people. And Ibn Abu Quhafa used it to fund the expeditions outside. Where are the Muslims? Where are the Shia when it comes to putting forward solutions to global issues that we face today? These are the lessons that we need to come out and teach the entire world. This is what the Madrasa of Ali Muhammad stands for. The teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen has solutions for you here, residents of Manchester, residents of the UK. We need to be forming parts of think tanks at educational levels, ahibai. While we're on this topic, the brother Sayyid made an announcement. See, احنا as a Shia Ummah, it becomes our responsibility that when you have a new brother or a new sister who has embraced the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt, this is my belief, it becomes our responsibility to perhaps even kiss their hand and grant them the highest level of respect and i'tibar. Perhaps they are at even a greater level of conviction than somebody who is born and raised into the faith. When you're born and raised into the faith, many times you take it for granted. But there are people who have searched for the light. They have searched for that light, and when they found that light, they saw that the light, this nur, is more precious than any wealth the dunya can offer. And aslan, we need to learn lessons from them. My point here is this. When you have brothers and sisters who have embraced the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt, it is our responsibility to form the foundation of a strong community by having fluid relationships amongst ourselves. A community in which ethnicity doesn't play a role. A community in which your race doesn't play a role. A community in which whatever country or whatever political alliance you may have, it doesn't matter. Because there is one thing that bonds us and one thing only, and that's the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. And once we recognize that, every other issue is a secondary issue. We need to be working together in terms of translations of Nahjul Balagha, translations of Sahif al-Sajjadiyya, the Quran classes the brother talked about. The entire community comes together, regardless of gender, regardless of color, because there is only one thing that drives you forward, and that's wilayah. This is the fundamental lesson that we take from Karbala. You look at the companions of Imam al-Hussein, Joan from Ethiopia, and you have Habib who is from Kufa, and you have from Hijaz, and you have so on and so forth. The background is not even a concern anymore. You know, Sometimes we think we have to sit back, and Fatemiyah is the best time. Aslan, shunu where are we as a community? Where in 2020 we're still talking about integrating within the Shia for real. We're supposed to be past this. Entum, you carry the light of Ahlul Bayt inside your hearts. We should be aiming at a higher thing. Integration, shunu integration. These are things that should have happened 10 years. Aslan, the word integration doesn't even have it doesn't even have meaning into this. It's not that we are all from different species, are we? No. Service of Ahlul Bayt, striving to serve Ahlul Bayt, particularly from an academic perspective. This needs to be a gelling factor in the community. And when you do this, you'll be surprised how you become an ambassador of the faith of Ahlul Bayt, an ambassador of the teachings of Amirul Mu'mineen without even recognizing. And inshallah, the hope is that this Fatemiyah becomes the nights of inspiration, inshallah, for each and every one of you to work and to raise the lofty teachings of Ahlul Bayt in a city like Manchester, because there is benefit for everyone, Shia and non-Shia, from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. And inshallah, you are the visionary people who will allow this to happen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If I've gone over my time for the majlis, I'm going to apologize. It's weekend and tomorrow is Sunday, so khair inshallah. Our masa'ib is pretty lengthy today as well. And you saw the Shabab today in the reenactment of the final moments of the life of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. And like yesterday, Ahibai, I want to take your hearts back to Medina tonight. Medina al-Munawwara. And it is as if from here you send your salams to Rasulullah. And you are sitting by his grave. And the sweet scent of Rasulullah is just floating over his grave. The scent that brings tears in your eyes, and through the scent you are able to envision the kindness and the honor and the principles of Rasulullah. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ Ya Rasulullah. The narrations mention that upon the martyrdom of Rasulullah and upon the attack on the house of Sayyidah Fatemah al-Zahra and the martyrdom of Muhsin al-Shahid, Sayyidah Fatemah al-Zahra spent the remaining days of her life in weakness and was pale for most of the time. Every Tuesday and Thursday she would go out of Medina towards the land of Uhud, and she would sit and she would weep by the grave of Hamza. She would remember the bravery of Hamza and the bravery of Rasulullah in the way they gained victory over the mushrikeen. She would sit and she would make a tasbih from the turba of the grave of Hamza, and she would glorify Allah as she would weep. She would weep in the daytime and she would weep in the night time, until the companions came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and they said to her, Ya Abul Hasan, Fatemah cries in the daytime and she cries also in the night time. We are not able to sleep in peace at night, and we are not able to concentrate on our work in the daytime. So tell Fatemah either to cry in the day or to cry in the night. The reality is that when the people heard Fatemah cry, this crying of Fatemah was the biggest reminder of her oppression and the oppression of Amir al-Mu'mineen. For every time they saw Fatemah cry, that guilt kicked inside of them, so they wanted her to stop. Amirul Mu'mineen went back to Sayyida Zahra and he said to her, Yabna ya binta Rasulillah, this is the concern of the people. Fatima said, indeed, my staying and my living in the dunya between the people is for a very short time, and I shall never cease, I shall never stop to weep over the tragedy that occurred on my father and upon us. So Amir al-Mu'mineen built a house for Sayyida Fatimah al-Zahra in Jannatul Baqi, known as Baytul Ahzan. Every morning Sayyida Fatima would go there holding the hands of Hassan and Hussein. She would go to Baytul Ahzan and she would cry there from morning till evening. After Salatul Maghrib, Amirul Mu'mineen would go to Baytul Ahzan and bring Fatima back to the house. One of the poets mentioned that I wonder how Fatima walked from her house to Baytul Ahzan. In one hand she would hold the hands of Hassan and Hussein, and with the other hand she would hold her broken rib as she walked towards Baytul Ahzan. On the 7th day upon the martyrdom of Rasulullah, Sayyidah Zahra went to Masjid al-Nabawi and she began to cry when she saw the grave of Rasulullah. She cried in a manner when her eyes were teary. She tripped over her hijab and she fell over onto the grave of Rasulullah and fainted. A few women of Bani Hashim came forward. They sprinkled water on the face of Sayyidah Zahra. When she regained consciousness, she cried out, she said, Ya Abata, Ya Rasulallah, oh my father, oh Rasulallah, how lonely has this dunya become after you. Man lil musalla wa man lil qibla, oh my father, indeed the mihrab and the musalla is empty without you. She then picked a handful of dust from the grave of Rasulullah and she smelt it and she began to weep and cry until her voice was choking with tears. She says, Mada liman shamma turaba Ahmadin an la yashummu mada zamani ghawaliya كل المغيب تحت أطباق الثرى إن كنت تسمع صوتي وندائي صبت علي المصائب لو أنها صبت على الأيام سرنا ليالي. Sayyidah Zahra said, the difficulties that have fallen upon me, had they fallen upon the day, they would have turned into night. What difficulties are these, Ya Zahra? From all the tragedies, perhaps Sayyidah Zahra was referring to the burning of her house. Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam says, when the Lu'ana burnt the door of Fatima, she stood behind and she began to choke from the fumes and the flames of the burning door. Imam as-Sadiq says, the face of Fatima was burnt from the flames as she stood behind the door and the wall. Allah, Allah. Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra spent her days in her house missing Rasulullah. When Bilal came back to Medina, Bilal was sent to Sham. He came back to Medina and then he went back to Sham where he was exiled. When Bilal came back to Medina and he asked about Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen, Sayyidah Zahra said, "Oh Bilal, why do you not recite the adhan? Recite for me, because your voice reminds me of the adhan at the time of Rasulullah." Bilal went up and began to recite the adhan. Allah Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Sayyidah Zahra said, I bear witness there is no Allah, there is no God but Allah. And when he reached the part and said, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, when Zahra heard Muhammadur Rasulullah in the adhan, she began to weep until she fainted. Amir al-Mu'mineen sent a message to Bilal, "Oh Bilal, stop the adhan, lest the daughter of Muhammad dies out of grief." Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra spent the rest of her days pale and weak, heavily sick because of the injuries that she had sustained from the assault on the door. From the injuries, she had a punctured lung, causing her difficulty in breathing. She was whipped on the shoulder by Ibn Khattab and by Kunfudh. As a result of this, she had bruising on her shoulder and on her back. Imam as-Sadiq says, when Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra died and she closed her eyes, Imam as-Sadiq says, when a person dies, they close both their eyes. But when our grandmother Fatima died, she closed only one eye. They asked her, they said, Yabna Rasulullah, why did she close one eye? It says, because the other eye of my mother Fatima was swollen. Her eye was bruised to the extent because of the slap on her face. Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra was weak and pale due to the injuries that she had sustained from the assault on the door. For 3 days before her martyrdom, she called Amir al-Mu'mineen and she sat him by the bed. She said to him, Ya Abul Hasan, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I saw my father in a dream last night, and he has said to me that my time has come to leave the dunya and to be with him in Jannah. For in 3 days' time, Ya Abul Hasan, I shall depart from this world, and hence I would like to give you my final wasiyah. Amirul Mu'mineen began to weep and cry, and he said to her, O Fatima, my grief has been renewed with your death, and there is no more comfort and no more support for me after you. Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra said to him, Ya Abul Hasan, my wasiyah to you is that number 1, you should marry Umama after me. She is a pious lady and she will be a good mother for my children Hassan and Hussein, Zainab and Kulthum. And then she said, Ya Abul Hasan, my wasiyah to you is that do not let anyone who oppressed me to attend my funeral. I do not want them to pray over me. Even from the Ansar and the Muhajirin who followed them, do not let them pray over me. Ya Abul Hasan, I want you to bury me in the darkness of the night. And I want you to hide my grave. For all these people who have oppressed me, I do not want them even to stand on my grave. Abul Hasan replied back, O daughter of Rasulullah, indeed you shall find me to be credible and trustworthy in implementing your final wishes. After this, Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra called in Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra, her daughter Zainab. She sat her by the side and she said to her, my daughter Zainab, from now on you shall take care of Hassan and Hussein. You shall be like a mother to Hassan and Hussein. And then she gave the shirt of Nabiullah Ibrahim to Sayyida Zainab. And she said to him, O Zainab, this the shirt of Nabiullah Ibrahim. Give it to your brother Hussein, for he shall ask it from you on the day of Ashura. He shall wear it and take it before he is martyred in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then Sayyidah Zahra said, my daughter Zainab, I shall give you one word in trust. Sayyidah Zainab, a young girl at the age of 4 or 5, was watching with tears rolling down her cheeks. She said, yes, my mother, I shall accept your trust. Sayyidah Zahra said, Zainab, on that day of Ashura, I want you to kiss the neck of Hussein on my behalf. Ya Zahra, why the neck of Imam al-Hussein? Why the neck? Why not the shoulder? Why not the hands? Allah, Allah, ya Shia, this is that neck that will be severed with a blunt knife by Shimmer. This is that neck that will be separated from the body and then be lodged upon spears and taken from. Even on her deathbed, Zahra is crying over the tragedy of Abu Abdullah. Allah, Allah, ya Shia, may your tears carry you into Jannah. Sayyida Zahra gave the trust to Sayyida Zainab, and she said to him, O my daughter Zainab, on that day of Ashura, kiss my son Hussein on the neck on my behalf. On the day of her martyrdom, on the day of her martyrdom, she washed the hair of Imam Hassan and Hussein and her children, and then she sent Zainab and Kulthum to the house of one of the women from Bani Hashim. She then sent Hassan and Hussein after combing their hair. She sent them towards the masjid to be with Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sayyidah Fatima sent the children outside the house such that they are not bared with the difficulty of seeing their mother die in front of them. Sayyidah Asma bint Umays was in the house at the time. Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra prepared the food for the children and for Amir al-Mu'mineen and for Asma. Just before the time of Salat, or just around the time of Salatul Dhuhr, Sayyidah Zahra said to Asma bint Umays, O Asma, I am going back into my chamber or into my room, and I shall glorify Allah. Ya Asma, as soon as you hear that my voice has stopped and that I am not glorifying Allah, know that I have departed from the dunya. Asma says, I went and I was troubled by the words of Fatima, so I followed her and I sat outside her room. She says, Sayyidah Zahra lay down on the ground facing the Qibla. She began to recite the tasbih and the tahleel. Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah. Asma says the tasbih continued for Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra for some time, and then from behind the curtain the tasbih stopped. I put my ear closer to the room and I heard Fatima say, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulallah, السلام عليك يا ملك الموت أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. This is Fatima. Rasulullah has come with Malakul Maut to take the soul of Fatima. These are the final moments, Ya Shia. She recited the Shahadatain. وغمضت عينيها. She closed her eyes. ومددت رجليها ويديها. She straightened her legs and she straightened her hands facing the Qibla. She took the final breath. Allah, Allah. رحم الله من نادى يا فاطمة وزهراء. Allah. Asma bint Umays. Asma bint Umays says the room went quiet. I called out, oh my master Fatima. There was no answer from the room. I called out a second time. There was no answer. Asma bint Umays says, I entered into the room and I saw the lifeless body of Fatima in the middle of the room. She says, I went back outside. At that moment, Imamain al-Hassan and Hussein came into the house. Asma says, I wiped my tears and I greeted the children and I forced a smile on my face. Asma is saying, I'm thinking, how do I tell these two innocent children that their mother Fatima has died? So Asma said, oh my masters, Hassan and Hussein, let us sit and let us eat bread together. Imam Hassan looked at Imam al-Hussein in surprise and they said, Ya Asma, when have you seen us eat lunch without our mother Fatima? Where is our mother? Asma refused to answer. She looked away. So Imam al-Hussein said, Oh Asma, where is my mother Fatima? At that moment, the tears of Asma began to roll down her cheeks. Imam Hassan and Hussein realized that something is not right. So the two Imamain, children of the age of 6 and 7, ran into the room. They see the body of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra on the ground. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba goes. He shakes the shoulder of his mother Fatima. He calls her out, Ya Ummah. There is no answer. He looks up at Imam al-Hussein. He shakes the shoulder again. There is no answer. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba falls on the shoulders of his mother and he says, Oh mother Fatima, in lam tukallimini. He says, if you do not speak to me, my ruh shall leave my body. Allah, Allah. Imam al-Hussein threw himself on the feet of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra. He held the feet and began to shake them. He said, Oh mother, this is me, Hussein. I am your son, Hussein. If you do not answer me, I shall die of grief. Allah, Allah. The children began to cry. Imam Hassan and Hussein are hugging each other, weeping over the body of Sayyidah Fatima. Asma bint Umays says to the two Imams, go back into the masjid and inform your father Amir al-Mu'mineen of the death of Fatima. The two children were crying. They ran out of the house. The Ansar were thinking that Hassan and Hussein are missing their grandfather today, which is why they are crying. They went into the masjid, into the mihrab. They saw their father Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam al-Hassan in a broken voice said, Oh father, our mother Fatima has died. Allah, Allah. Ya Shi'at Amir al-Mu'mineen, put your hands on your heart if you can understand what was the reaction of Amir. The narrations mention فَوَقَعَ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ. when he heard of the tragedy of Fatima, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the warrior of all warriors, he fell down face first. The news of the death of Sayyidah Fatima. When a person falls down, he uses his hands. Amir al-Mu'mineen fell face first. This is how shocked and how hurt he was from the news. Salman and Abu Dhar helped up Amir al-Mu'mineen. He takes Hassan and Hussein and they go back into the house. The news spreads in the entire Medina of the death of Fatima. The Ansar and the Muhajirin are waiting outside the house. The narrations mention over here that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen waited until night time, and then he said to Abu Dhar, "Oh Abu Dhar, go and make an announcement to the people that the funeral has been delayed." So the people left. In the darkness of the night, Amir al-Mu'mineen began to give the ghusl. Amir al-Mu'mineen began to give the ghusl for Sayyidah Fatimah az-Zahra. He said to Umays that you should prepare the water and I shall give the ghusl. Umays says that Amir al-Mu'mineen was giving the ghusl to Sayyidah Zahra while I was waiting outside. I know there are Sadat in the Majlis. Ya Sada, forgive me for this. And we only recite this such that the madhlumiyat of Sayyidah Zahra can be known. Asma says, I was seated outside while Amir al-Mu'mineen was giving the ghusl to Fatima. And suddenly I heard a cry. I heard the cry from Amir al-Mu'mineen. He began to weep and he began to wail. Allah, do you know the meaning of wail? Wail is when somebody cries out in pain in their loudest voices. So Asma says, I went to Amir al-Mu'mineen. I said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, have patience on the tragedy. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, it is not about patience. He says, while I was giving the ghusl to Fatima, I came across the broken rib. Allah, Allah. Amir al-Mu'mineen gave the ghusl and the kafan to Sayyidah Fatimah az-Zahra. He prepared her with the kafan and then he brought the body back. They brought the body of Sayyidah Zahra in the middle of the house. Amir al-Mu'mineen then cried out and said, O Zainab, Kulthum, Hassan, Hussein, come and give your final farewell to your mother Fatima. They came and they hugged the body of Sayyidah Zahra. Imam Hassan and Hussein were weeping. Imam al-Hassan said, Oh Mother Fatima, now that you are going to Rasulullah, give our salams to Rasulullah, but even tell our grandfather of how oppressed we are as orphans. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I swear by Allah, the way Hassan and Hussein were crying, at one point, Sayyidah Fatimah az-Zahra from under the kafan opened up her arms and hugged Hassan and Hussein. The angels cried out, Ya Abul Hassan, remove Hassan and Hussein, for indeed the angels around the arsh are weeping for me. In the darkness of the night, Amir al-Mu'mineen buries Sayyidah Fatimah az-Zahra as he is laying her down into the qabr, and before he seals the grave, he placed Sayyidah Fatimah az-Zahra, and then he looked towards Masjidun Nabawi and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I am returning your trust back to you, but Ya Rasulullah, when you find that your trust is broken, and your trust is bruised, and your trust has been assaulted. You ask her of how the Ummah treated her, with tears rolling down his cheeks. Amirul Mu'mineen covered the grave of Fatima, and then he leveled it with the earth so that no one could tell where the trace of the grave is. Allah, Amirul Mu'mineen returns back to the home with his back bent. I say to you, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, the tragedy of Zahra is great, and you wept when you came across the broken rib of Zahra. Ya Ali, come to the Ali of Karbala, Zain al-Abidin. Ya Ali, look at the Ali in Karbala. When he wants to lift the body of Imam al-Hussein, he lifts it from the right side. The left side of the body falls down. When he lifts the body from the left side, the right side of the body falls down. Zainul Abidin sits on the plains. He says, how do I bury my father? Bani Asad came to him. They said, is the body of your father so heavy? Imam Sajjad began to cry. He said, not at all, but they have broken every bone when they trampled. If I lift the body from the right, the broken bones of the left fall